This is The Last Laugh. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast. And if you watched the Emmys this month, you may have seen my guest on this week's show win her first award for playing Ava Daniels on Hacks, and give a hell of an acceptance speech when she hit the stage. Hannah Einbinder and I talked just about a year ago, when she had just landed what was then her third consecutive Emmy nomination for Hacks. And I wanted to revisit our conversation this week, now that she finally took home the trophy for her incredible work on that show. Before we get into the interview, here's an uncensored clip of how Hannah ended her Emmy speech in all its glory.
I just want to say, finally, go Birds, fuck ICE, and free Palestine. Thank you.
Hannah Einbinder, welcome to The Last Laugh, and congrats on the Emmy nomination. Very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I love the show so much, and I don't know if you know this, but I've been trying to get you on this podcast for, at least since that first season when I saw you on the show. And so I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm really glad that you're here, after getting to see your special as well, which I also thought was just fantastic and such a great hour of comedy. So I kind of thought maybe we could start there, because I feel like, watching your special after having seen so much of you on Hacks, I felt like you get to be funny in a different way on stage than you do in the show. So I wondered if you could kind of talk about the differences there. And I think you have this sort of you're playing a character on Hacks, obviously, but you have this very overly confident persona as well on stage, which I don't know is exactly what you're like in real life either. So can you talk about sort of maybe playing those two different characters in some sense?
Yeah, definitely characters. I think my stand-up persona was kind of born out of aspiration. I was like, this persona is like everything that I could ever want to be. This is how I would want to present the version of myself that feels aspirational. And also, of course, stylistically, like, I have always felt more interested in like experimental form bending type comedy. Those have been my influences. And so, I think like that has been my approach, and that has been the type of material that I have tried to write. And yeah, I think they definitely both are both characters. I think Ava's, the real, even like filmic real versus stage, of course, creates a massive distinction. Like Ava is like a real person in her real life, and the stage element, I do really like lay it on thick with the theatrics. So that's probably a big fundamental difference between the two performances. But yeah, I feel like just the experience of being an actor has kind of lent itself to my confidence to lean into that more theatrical style that I have established on stage.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was there from the beginning of you doing comedy. I can't imagine that you came out of the gate that confident, your first few times getting up and trying to tell jokes on stage.
Honestly, I did.
You did?
Yeah. That was I still have a video of my first set, and it is really, really that energy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how did you do that? That's most people are probably, a little timid at first, but I guess, did you feel like you had to do that, or that was like the only way for you to make it work, or?
Yeah, I think, people often say to me that like doing stand-up and being on stage is brave, and I disagree. I think it's desperate. I think I needed to do that because I felt bad all the time, and I was like, maybe this will fix it, So yeah, it just was this thing where I was like, for 10 minutes or 3 minutes or, 7 minutes, whatever the whether it's an open mic or a show, like I am going to escape from the reality of being me, and I'm going to be something better, and I'm going to feel of value to other people. And that is frankly like the real of how why I started doing stand-up.
Did you feel like that worked? Were you able to fix what you were trying to fix through stand-up?
For however long I was on stage, yeah. And then it would, of course, melt away. And unless I bombed, in which case, like, you know, it's a gamble. Like I was gambling with my own emotional well-being. Now, thank God, I feel so much better being myself, and in my life, that, you know, stand-up is just additive and not a survival mechanism. But yeah, that's certainly how it started.
Was there a turn when that happened, when you felt that change happen, where it was not survival and it was something that was just that was actually enjoyable to do, or even enjoyable when you weren't on stage?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like my process has been very consistent since I started writing stand-up. I feel like it has been very much like I create in isolation. I have now moved into like more writing on stage at times. Like I have forced myself. I did a show. I had probably like 12 minutes of new material, but I like forced myself to be on stage for like 50-ish minutes, just being like, I have to survive kind of up here and figure out if there's like anything that comes from that. And so that was an interesting exercise. Very, very not very typical for me. I typically am like very, very memorized, choreographed, and written to the comma.
Your special is called Everything Must Go, which I know you've talked a little bit about how it's the idea of burning your material, that you've been working on for so long. There is that kind of cliche about the first album, right? Where it's like everything that you've ever worked on for your, since you started making music goes into that first album. And then the second album is like, what do I do now? So are you in that mode now of trying to figure out what do you do now that you did burn all of the material that you had been working on since the start of your career?
Yes. I am.
And what's that like?
Sad. No, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's awesome to feel like a raw nerve again, because I was so like, I stand by and love and appreciate that hour and all of that material. I'm very, 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 very proud of it. But, some of those jokes I had been doing for years and years and years and years, and every night and on stage. And, so I really, while I love that material and I'm proud of it, I am never going to say those words again. And I'm so fine with it. And so there is no greater feeling for me as a stand-up comedian than feeling excited about a new chunk, a new section, a new line. Like, the newness is what makes me feel love for the art form. Like, so I had a period of like several months leading up to the special. A couple months right before the special, and then several months directly after the special, where I was like, I have nothing. There's nothing. I'm not thinking of anything. I hate everything I'm writing. It's not good enough. Like, it's not better than anything in the hour. Like, I just was like, it's fun. And I was like starting to make peace with the fact that like, oh, maybe it's just most comics only really have one good hour in them, genuinely. Like, it is very rare to maintain quality over a period, like over a career for comics. They'll put the hour out, but the quality wanes pretty much instantly. That's like pretty typical from what I have found. And I thought, maybe that's me, and that's fine. I started to like accept that. And then like, of course, just like was struck with, several ideas that now I'm back in, but I was ready. I was like, well, that's one and done. So,
Well, even if that was the only one, it was a great special, but I'm sure you have more in you. I'm wondering how, having all of the acting and hacks on the side of that has influenced. I mean, you've talked about how hacks has impacted the audience of your shows, and you've been able to play bigger venues and certainly, brought you more attention, but has it affected the content, whether it's the experience of being on the show or, even playing a comedy writer and working with a, character who does stand up on the show? I mean, do you feel like that has done anything to your material or how you approach the stand up side?
I mean, I don't think so. I think like my comic persona and like the expression of my comedy as a stand-up comedian has always been intentional and very distinct. And so while I have settled in and become more comfortable over the years in that persona, I think ultimately like that form of expression has remained kind of consistent. Like I said earlier, I think like being an actor and doing the act of acting has increased my commitment to the choices that I have been making, because it was a style that I established before I started acting. Acting just heightened it so much more to where I'm now willing to be absolutely screaming, crying, it's like it has just like enriched my live performance so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because the sort of narrative is that you had never really acted before you did Hacks, but do you feel like that's inaccurate in some way? Like you were acting on stage as a comedian before Hacks?
You could say that, I definitely think they're different. But I think, I had certainly had a immense performance experience. Acting is a different beast in a lot of ways, especially for someone with a stand-up background, because it is totally rewiring, especially when you're doing comedy. It's totally rewiring like your feedback loop. Like, we're recording sound so no one can laugh, and you're doing comedy to silence. And it's like,
is that strange?
It is. It took a lot of getting used to. And I was going, am I doing a bad job? Am I bombing? Like I wrap my head around the reality that we were recording sound and no one was supposed to laugh. Like, but it's like in my body was reacting. Like I was getting the bombing feeling in my skin. Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about the confidence that you felt even from that first time getting up, and it was sort of out of necessity. I'm wondering if that translated to the first time going up against Jean Smart as Deborah in a scene and being like, well, here I am, and I better deliver this acting performance with this veteran actress who's been doing it for decades. And this was really your first thing. So how did you approach, just even that first scene that you had with her?
I mean, I think that first of all, it's a credit to Jean that she not only this is not only true for me, but it's true for everyone on set. She really goes out of her way to make people feel comfortable. Like there is no air of superiority. There are no intimidation tactics. She is deeply warm. And that I think made me feel more comfortable to be able to do my best work. She just would not allow for it. Like before, I've said this, but the night before my final callback, before our screen test, she got my number and called me. And she just said, hey, she was like dyeing her son's hair green or something. She's like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm dyeing my kid's hair, but I just wanted to say, like, I saw your stand up and I think you're really funny and I'm really excited for tomorrow. And I know it's going to be strange because it was COVID pre-vaccine. Oh, wow. And we actually have a picture right here. We had this little divider between us.
That's amazing. So it's like a glass wall between
dust. Yeah, that was the tech at the time.
Yeah. But, they thought that was not effective. That wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, that was where we were at with that was where science was at. But she was like, I think it's going to be a strange environment. Yeah. But I just want you to know, like, it's going to be great. We're going to have fun. Like, just want to say hi. And I was like, it was so, she just made me feel so comfortable, and I don't think that's really the standard. I think she's probably one of the only people who would do that. Yeah.
And then of course the scene that you have with her in the first episode, you have to go in and basically scream at her and tell her how horrible she is. So was that intimidating, or did you just kind of dive into that dynamic quickly?
I would say that was intimidating. I mean, that was one of the audition scenes. So I had spent a lot of time with it. But yeah, I mean, it sets up their dynamic. It's such an important scene for the tone of the series. And so I just wanted to make sure, that I got it right. And I think that, we definitely move quickly on our show, but that was one that we spent a lot of time with, just like really perfecting, because I think that was, that it's a long scene. And like I said, very important to the show. So I was intimidated, but once we started to get it, felt more comfortable.
Yeah. How do you feel like the dynamic between the two of you has evolved over the seasons to where it is now? I mean, obviously it's taken a lot of twisty turns dramatically, but even just sort of working together, how has it changed since you started?
And I think I think the reason why we work so well together, and I think the reason why I ended up getting cast, was because we did have rapport just instantly. Like, we really did have electric chemistry from the moment we stepped foot on the same plane. But we just have gotten more comfortable and closer, and it's just a well-oiled machine now. We have the same crew, we have the same DP, we have the same, writers, more or less. Like, everybody's really comfortable and hitting their stride, I think.
Yeah. The center of the show is really the relationship between the two of you, and this, these two women in comedy who came up at very different times in comedy, and there's sort of the generational divide there. I was curious if you were able to draw on anything, or if there were any parallels between you and your mother, who came up in comedy at a very different time. Was that ever something that was on your mind in terms of the generational aspect of it?
I think I think anyone who has like an older parent can tap into that thing. Like, I think the types of conversations that Ava and Deborah have, about like whatever it may be, like a social issue that they disagree on, like that feels like something that, like, the types of conversations that you have with a parent who's just coming at it from a different time and a different angle. But I think in terms of like my mom, she's pretty liberal and like leftist and on the money.
Not that much like Deborah.
No, my mom's from LA. She's like a liberal Jew who's like cool. So she's not as like, I think Deborah probably comes at it from more of like I don't even know what to call her politics. I think she's a Democrat, but I think she's maybe like, just, I don't know, like super moderate with like some social views that maybe skew.
She's a Democrat that like maybe voted for Reagan.
Yeah. Because they were buddies, probably.
Yeah. I just had Jack Quaid on this podcast, and I was thinking about it because we were talking about how he did this like really deliberate thing where he didn't go into rom-coms because his mom is like the queen of rom-coms. And I was curious if that drew you to stand up at all once you decided, you wanted to do comedy, as opposed to trying to do sketch or trying to get on Saturday Night Live and that route. Did you think about that at all when you were early in your career, sort of deciding what you wanted to do?
No, I didn't. I just did what I was good at, I think.
Yeah. You just liked stand up, and that was what you were drawn to? Yeah. Yeah. I was curious if anyone tried to cast you in this new SNL movie as your mom. Did that come up at all?
No, I did not. No, I didn't. I was not contacted.
There's so many great episodes of this recent season. I think the one where you're hiking in the woods sort of too long inadvertently was really great. The Berkeley episode I also thought was just a high point of the season, and not just because I'm living in Berkeley right now, so it felt close to home. I was curious, first of all, did you film it? Where did you film the Berkeley stuff?
USC.
Yeah, I thought it was not Berkeley.
Yeah, no.
I was like, I don't think they took the whole production up to the Bay Area.
No, super SoCal, yeah.
But I really loved that episode. First of all, the runner of Ava trying to fit in with the college kids was very funny. So that was did you have fun with that sort of that bit that ran throughout the episode?
So fun. So fun. Yeah, I loved the runner of like everyone thinking that Ava's like hitting on them. She was just like, what? So silly. Yeah, that was great. I mean, that's that episode covers something that like we're always talking about whether we like it or not, which is like, cultural standards shifting in comedy. And I thought it was really beautifully done by the writers.
Yeah, it was something that the show has touched on in certain ways before, but this was the first time I feel like you guys really took it head on, the whole, cancel culture thing. I mean, yeah, just the conversations between you and Deborah in that episode are just so pointed, and I think get at something that the nuance of something that often isn't treated with nuance. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how involved you were in sort of the discussions around that, but how did you sort of think about those conversations that Ava and Deborah have after this, reel comes out of all the offensive things that Deborah has said before, and there's people sort of trying to cancel her, and she's worried that it's going to affect her getting the late night job?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's something that we, like, Paul Gianlucia and I are, especially not as well, it depends, because people ask us about this a lot, but like just like pro political correctness and comedy and like whatever. So we do talk about it a lot, but it just, we have like the same opinion on it. And so like, I definitely didn't affect like their writing on it, but we all just happen to agree and have talked about it.
I think it gets at something that's really interesting in that conversation. And it reminded me, I think it was Paul and Lucia were on another podcast talking about, it was around when Jerry Seinfeld made his comments about the extreme left ruining comedy. And they were talking about how ridiculous that is. And I think Hacks has been held up as such a counter example of that idea, where this is a show that, to me, to so many people is so funny, and has not been, there's no reason why it can't be hilarious and, insightful and not offensive and all of that. So it's, I think, I was curious if you had thoughts about, whether it's, Seinfeld's comments specifically, or just that idea that we can't make funny comedy anymore.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You just have to be smart. You can't, when marginalized groups have heard every joke under the sun at their expense, it's not that they can't take jokes. It's that they are sick and tired of hearing the hack, if you will, redundant shit that is easy and low hanging fruit. Like, I don't think that anyone I know, or I can just speak to my experience of like being queer and being a woman and being Jewish, like, I actually don't have any problem with jokes at my expense or the expense of any groups I may belong to, if the joke is smart. Like, I really don't. Like, I don't think anyone, I think everybody, especially people from marginalized groups, have to laugh to keep from crying and have to laugh at themselves. And we do. We're just asking for better material. And I think, a lot of stand-up comedians are really hardened in their perspective. That is an inherent, sort of personality trait of a comic, being like, this is what I think, and everybody pays to listen to me say what I think. And so I'm the arbiter of what's what. And, it's like this sort of egomaniacal, personality type. And so they don't want to be told that they're wrong, and they don't want to have to waver and change when their work is built around having a staunch perspective on something. It's very, it's so, I would be so embarrassed to be so seen in that way. It's so transparent when someone gets defensive and, blames whatever words they want to use, the PC woke leftist mob or whatever. It's just like, oh my God, you should be so embarrassed because we all see that you're scared and hurt and don't want to be wrong and don't want to be labeled a bad person. Like, no one wants to feel like a bad person. No one. Yeah. And so, when you call someone out on something and they get defensive, it just shows sort of a lack of evolution. People who can self-reflect can go, I wonder if they're right. Maybe I am wrong. I can learn from that. That is actually more impressive to me. And so, yeah, it's just very classic. I think also people who are older are more hardened. And so, I'm not holding my breath for any of these old fucking guys who want to blame, whatever they want to blame instead of looking inward.
So back to Hacks. Heading into season 4 now, this is, I guess, a spoiler for anyone who hasn't watched it, but I feel like if you're listening this far in the interview, you probably have. Deborah has finally has her shot at late night, and Ava has blackmailed her way in as head writer. So I thought, since we talked about that very first scene, that confrontation scene between the two of you in season 1, I'm curious about, this confrontation scene, one where she tells you that you're not going to be the head writer, and then at the end where you come in and sort of take the upper hand, what it was like playing those scenes with her.
Those scenes were new territory for me, for Ava. I think it was really, really rewarding to be able to engage in that creative exercise of, like, what I mean? Like, really playing something that is whether it's the scene in the living room where they're having a confrontation and it's like this massively emotional scene that is so loaded with everything that has come before it, and the first 2 seasons and the majority of the third, that felt like really cathartic and really rewarding. I love to cry. I really cry a lot, and I feel it is a wonderful release, and I felt very moved by the words and the dialogue, and it was nice to let that move through. And then the final scene in the conference room was cool. Like, I felt cool. And
it's kind of badass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder.
Too, like,
I wonder how much. Yeah.
I'm not like that.
You're not like crazy. That in real life. Yeah.
No.
It does make me wonder how much of that, attitude is going to carry over into the next season. Like, not sure Ava can keep that up, that level of cool up for the entire season.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that scene is probably like distinct in its tone, but I imagine there will be like animosity between the two women, at least for start.
Yeah. They do like to start every season with you guys a little bit at odds. Seems to help.
Well, you're going to get your wish.
So, we talked about how you hadn't really acted before. I mean, I don't think you were super well known before this show. Now you're a 3-time Emmy nominated actor. I know Hacks is going to end at some point. Do you already think about sort of what you want to do after this? Do you want to lean into stand up? Are you excited to do more acting in other kinds of projects, or where's your head at?
I am. I'm excited to do hopefully good work. That is my main objective, whether that takes the form of a film or a TV show. That is my hope. I also think, I love stand-up. That is my first love. There's nothing like it. It is also something that is, within my control. It is an art form that I can engage with kind of whenever I want, which is such a gift and such a privilege, because, there are so many actors who love acting and have to be sort of allowed to engage with that. Right. Yeah. Like that's tough. And so stand up is totally unlike that, because I am, kind of a one-man band in that medium. So I love that. I will always do that, I think. And yeah, I'm super down for like whatever is creatively fulfilling, I think.
Yeah. So now it's time for our segment called The First Laugh to end the show. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions here, starting with the first piece of comedy that made you laugh really hard as a kid growing up.
Oh my God. I don't know. Let me think. I don't know. What would it be? Would it be like, maybe it would be a cartoon, right?
Yeah. That's a common answer.
Yeah, it's probably like Cat Dog or Courage the Cowardly Dog or, God, the early 90s cartoon.
This is proving that we're a different generation.
Yeah. What's yours?
Oh, I don't know, but I was thinking Rugrats or Ren and Stimpy or that era. But
yeah. Yeah. That too.
There's some overlap. We're not that far apart, but
yeah. Wait, how old are you?
I'm 40. So we're 10 years apart, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm 29, yeah. But
you're not even 30 yet.
I know, but I'm ready to go.
You're ready to be 30?
Is such a bullshit age.
Yeah, it is, really.
Let's go.
Let's get the not a great age.
No, it's just let's be 30. Can we just let's go? That's how I feel. Yeah, just all those like Nickelodeon cartoons, probably.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time that you knew that you were funny, that you could make other people laugh?
Yeah. I don't, but I mean that is probably my that's probably my earliest expression of like, I feel like probably so young. That's just like
from before you can remember.
Yeah, it's my wiring. It's also my upbringing,
Yeah. We talked a little bit about that first time you performed stand-up, but what else, when you think about it, what else comes to mind just in terms of where you were and how it went and what the situation was?
Well, I was performing. So I was on the improv team in college, and I was never really good at that because I was just coming off of a very long period of drug use, of like, a high amount of Adderall and like just constantly chiefing, like stoner activity was going on. Big blunts to the face constantly, like at school, before school, after school. Like, so I was super in my head because of the cocktail I was kind of rocking with. And that had carved some neural pathways that were deep and hard to undo. And so improv requires sort of a freedom of thought and not thinking twice, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was thinking thrice,
tough.
maybe even 5 to 6 times before speaking, just kind of.
Not great for improv.
Yeah, trapped in my head in a big way. And so I wasn't really good at that. But then Nicole Byer came to my school and asked if any of the kids on the improv team wanted to open for her. And so I wrote, a set, roughly like 8 minutes, and I did a couple mics in Orange County, like just bar mics to get ready. And then the night arrived, and I was so nervous. So scared. And I had like some whiskey with me. So embarrassing. I was like, that was like my thing when I started, that I had like a glass of fucking, cause it'd be like, you go to the open mic and you have to buy a drink to perform. And I would always get like some Jameson on the rocks and just go up with it to be like, I'm cool, I'm confident. Yeah. I mean, like, that's what I mean.
Did that help?
No, it's I mean, I don't think so. Like, it just was this like persona choice that I was, where I was really laying it on thick. Like, if anything, I've pulled back from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You're even more confident at the beginning.
Yeah. And so I remember that. And I just remember the feeling that I would, of course, go on to have at Chase, which was stepping on stage and my nerves just completely melting away and getting laughs and feeling high and feeling good and feeling, like I said, of value to others. And it was ecstasy, and I loved it, and it went really well, honestly. And I just was like, yeah, this is my life now. This is what I'm going to do.
Do you remember the first joke you wrote that really worked? Was it in that very first set?
Yeah, I mean, one of the jokes in that set was in my special.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The two 1920s women.
Oh, that was one of, that's a pretty sophisticated joke for early material.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know, man. I really was, I really benefit from having a lifetime of being sort of indoctrinated with like the best comedy a person can see, like the really good shit, like my whole life. I didn't want to be a comic my whole life. I didn't want to do comedy. I didn't really have any direction at all. Like, I was just kind of like floating around. I was a cheerleader for many years competitively. That was a big part of my identity. Like, this wasn't a grand plan of mine. But like, all the while, I just was like, listening to the Sklar Brothers on the way to 6th grade, and fucking like Monty Python, and like Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks albums, and like all this like really quality.
It's just like osmosis.
Yeah, like I just had that in my head, and also like, it's like how we communicated. So it just, I don't know. It's just like, I guess I kind of came out the gate like running.
Yeah. I believe you did that bit about the two ladies on the phone on Colbert on your first appearance on that show, which was your late night stand-up debut. Is it true that is basically what led directly to Hacks, that appearance?
So that appearance, that was the only work of mine that was like out. Yeah. There was also a crowd work clip of me doing stand-up at the Laugh Factory. My buddy Mike.
Crowd work, very hot right now.
Very hot right now. This was way before the crowd work renaissance. Sorry. My buddy Mike Falzone, who's a wonderful comedian, runs this show called Surrounded, which is like comedians can't do material. It's only crowd work. So he had me on that, and there was a clip online of that. But Colbert was actually the way like I got on that show was so random, and like kind of not how usually like comics, their managers will like send in a tape. I like randomly hopped on a speakeasy show in Venice, and the booker was just in the back of the room, and she just like saw me and put me on basically from there. But that was the only piece of work that I had out. And so they were like, oh, good joke writer or whatever. So I think they probably were like, okay, she can rock with this or something.
Do you remember, did you have a story about the first time you met one of your comedy heroes, someone who you just really looked up to in the comedy world?
Let me think. This time hero. Well, in college, I went to film school, and in college we took one of the professors at Chapman University, where I went to film school, used to produce Steve Herson. He used to produce Conan for many years. And so we went to Conan as like a field trip. Yeah. And so I got to meet Conan, and he's like ginger legend, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like for my community, that's really huge. So like, he's so awesome, and he's so sweet and cool and smart and funny. And he's like he's like the best. I am sad he's not on the air anymore.
Yeah. You got to do his podcast, right?
I did. Yeah. That was crazy. I like cried.
I heard that. That was, seemed like you were having an emotional roller coaster.
I'm kind like, I just can't stop crying. I don't know what is happening to me. I'm just like, I've been crying everywhere I go lately. But yeah, I think Conan probably.
Finally, do you have a story or memory from your career that makes you laugh now, but really was not funny when it happened? The first audition for Hacks, I went into a casting office and I was just like sitting there with a bunch of girls who, were auditioning for Ava. And it was me and probably at the time, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, maybe 8 or 9 women. And the walls to the casting office were very, very thin. And I could hear every word, every molecule of every performance happening beyond the door. And we all could. And the scene that one of the actresses was doing was a scene was the first time we meet Ava, where she's in Jimmy's office and she's going, what am I going to do? Like, I'm so upset, she's kind of freaking out about being canceled and she's supposed to cry. It's written that she cries. And one of the girls is fucking going for it. She's crying, she's sobbing. And I'm sitting there, at this point, I have no experience. I'm going, I ain't planning on doing that, You're still a good crier in real life, but you weren't sure if you could do it on cue.
That's right. I was not yet able to do that, I guess, or I didn't know if I could. And I just in an attempt to sort of break the silence in the room. And I also didn't have really good audition etiquette at this time, I think. I just was used to fucking me and a bunch of men 15 years older than me in a dark bar. And so I just said, I said something along the lines of, wow, she's really doing it in there, huh? And I was like, that's pretty impressive. And one of the girls looks at me and goes, that's my friend Rachel. She's actually really talented. And I was like, oh, no, I didn't. I was, no, I mean, I was just saying.
You could tell she's really talented. Yeah.
It's impressive. Yeah. I wasn't sorry. I was like, fuck.
You learned what not to say in the audition room.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, just fuck me. Okay. And so I learned that from that. I laugh now. So.
Did you cry when you went in? Did you get any tears out?
No, I did not.
Turns out they were okay with it.
Yeah. I instead added a joke too. I just improvised some joke. So
yeah, I mean, it sounds like Rachel might not have been that funny.
She's actually really talented, Matt.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
She's actually really talented. So.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much for doing this. And as I said, I've been a fan of yours for a while now, and I'll be rooting for you at the Emmys.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was awesome. Appreciate you.
Thanks. All right.
Hell yeah.